You are listening to the Innovating Cannabis Podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel. In addition to hosting and producing this podcast, I'm a freelance writer and editor for the Cannabis Industry Journal. Jason Ambrosino, the founder of Veterans Holdings, a leading B2B cannabis manufacturer and supply partner producing bulk distillate rosin, crude oil, BHO, infused pre-rolls, and finished goods for licensed dispensaries, brands, and distributors across New York. Jason is also a member of the Association of New York Cannabis Processors and frequently mentors and advises numerous operators on business strategy and operations. He's very vocal in informing the Office of Cannabis Management and elected officials on the economics of cannabis and his challenges as a business owner in New York. Jason's not shy to share his insights and opinions on how the New York cannabis market is rolling out. Today we discuss the challenges business owners are facing trying to survive the New York tumultuous market rollout. Let's welcome Jason Ambrosino.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned it a bunch of times, but I basically had gotten into this because, I was hurt from the Army. So I retired from the Army, 100% service disabled vet. And, I kind of found cannabis. Cannabis found me. And, like many people, I started selling on the black market to pay for what I felt I needed myself, right? And then even when the medical came along in New York State, I couldn't embrace that program. The prices were completely outrageous. It was really hard in the beginning of that medical program to even get access. Even when you went there was nothing available for you. So it didn't work. And I went to the black market and that's where I got my start from. And at the same time, in 2019, the hemp bill gave us all the opportunity, or anybody who was paying the attention, particularly somebody who was selling in the black market, that it was a good fit. Right. And a lot of the things that I was learning and discovering about CBD and CBGs and all that kind of like minor cannabinoids, I was able to build into the recipes and learn processing and all that stuff. And our hemp company really kind of took off, and we were really helping people. It was fantastic. And then the opportunity to come for build the marijuana side out and get licensed came available, and this was a perfect fit. It was a no-brainer. So we came in, we had no investors. I like to say we came in with like $16,000, which was about what we were black in the hemp business after, horrible 2 or 3 years for everybody.
Yeah.
So, we took all that and we took our knowledge. We had an awful lot of knowledge from what we've gained, and we knew our customers and we knew what our customers wanted, and we just kind of built out from there. So we focused on making products that I knew I liked and I knew that were obtainable and accessible. And I think providing potent products, not potent as in high THC, but potent in effect, meaning I've properly balanced the cannabinoids to give you what you expected out of it, has really catapulted us. So, we're probably one of the 10 processors at this point in time. And that's pretty amazing for somebody who came in on the processing side of things with absolutely no investors or, big funding of any sort. We built everything organically from the ground up.
You're known for like all the cannabinoids, not just high THC. Is it certain strains that you're growing that, or just how you're growing, how you're preserving it?
We buy material from all over the state, right? So we go through maybe 50,000 pounds of material a year. So, we don't really do too much cultivation on our own anymore. I have a 5,000 square foot indoor license. I'd never built it out just because and we can talk about some of this, and I think it'll be, important to the conversation later, but the registered organizations in New York State own the flower industry. They own it. You're not going to break in. They own it. They can produce it for less than I can grow it for. So they're
the registered, the registered owners, you mean like?
Yeah. So all of your early medical dispensaries, all your medical providers, they're considered registered organizations in New York State. And, now that they've entered the rec side of it, They're growing out 100,000 square foot canopies, which makes it really kind of difficult for somebody with a 5,000 square foot canopy to compete. Because at the end of the day, what's the number one driver of indoor flower price? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
It's electricity cost.
Oh,
Right? The number one cost driver.
right.
So where I am in New York State, it's 23 cents a kilowatt hour. Vario's located in the same place, and I do Vario's trimming, so I'm trying to eat the crumbs where we can eat some crumbs, but they are able to negotiate with the utility provider or a large. If they're growing 100,000 square feet under lights and they're using so much electricity, they can negotiate directly. So they might negotiate directly for 7, 8, 9 cents a kilowatt hour while I'm paying 23 because I've only got a 5,000 square foot canopy. There will never be a day where I can compete with them on a market because it costs me twice as much to grow as it does them.
So, I mean, like any business, I guess, right, you can negotiate if you're doing high volume in anything. I mean, I know that's how it works, but I never had really heard this part of the challenge.
You don't really think about it much, right? Until
Whoa.
you end up paying for a license, only to find out that the utility prices are so high that it would cost me $600-ish a pound to grow a pound of finished material, maybe a little bit more, and they can do it for like 3 max. So
Mm,
there's just never gonna, and these are numbers. I'm like, I don't have a piece of paper. This is
yeah,
generalities we're throwing out here, but
yeah.
I think people would find they're pretty close.
And
It,
also, I think I've heard the complaint that it's because they had indoor first, like the people who came on later from the hemp program were only allowed to do outdoor grow. So that kind of put everybody behind the
Yeah.
ball.
Well,
Or was
that is an excuse, I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, I think all of these farmers, this is really kind of gets into um, what's really happening behind closed doors, right? Because when I look at what's happened in New York State over the past few years, I look at a program that you really use the illusion of inclusion to push public support for it. And we look at all of these protections that were built into the program that were supposed to protect these cultivators, protect processors, protect New York centric businesses from the big bad wolf, from the acreages, from the Curaleafs, from all of these guys. And what they've done is took away all of the protections. So they weren't supposed to get into the market up until we had 3 years to operate.
right.
Then they changed,
Right.
arbitrarily out of the blue because they spent enough lobbying dollars. They
Mm.
changed it.
I
Now,
thought it was
what
because they didn't get the social equity program up and running. They were like a year behind.
they held them hostage, essentially, is what happened. So what the lobbyists did is they came in and they talked to the lawmakers and they said, you've got all this money that you want to do, that you want to do good things with. We're not going to pay you any of that money until you give us a more favorable law, right? Because that's where all the bulk of this money, that's where these $5 million grants they've been handing out,
Mhm.
that's where this money's coming from. So the next part of this was that they were supposed to pay $20 million. And again, they said, well, none of
Oh,
us are going to pay that. So you better change the law because, we're just going to tie it up in court. We only want to pay 5 million.
mm,
So all of these things have been done in favor of the ROs. The protections of everybody else have been washed away. And now you've got a state where the majority of the canopy that's being grown, despite the data that OCM puts up, because it's very manipulated and it's very questionable, the numbers they're putting up. And they conflict with what they report from one day to the next. There's no consistency of what OCM puts out. One day there's not enough cultivation, or one day there's not enough canopy, the next day there's too much canopy, right? And then they manipulate the numbers because they will show you all of the potential canopy of the non-RO, let's just say adult use license holders. But the reality is like 80% of them aren't growing, maybe more than 80%, or they're only growing a partial amount of their grow. So you look at this thing and you're like, oh yeah, well, I can see where the balance is. But the reality is there's no balance, because when the ROs get the opportunity to open up their facilities, they're immediately going with, I think Vario's operating half capacity only because of a power problem. But you've got Curaleaf and you've got Acreage that's Columbia Care and PharmaCann, and they've all got these huge grows. I think PharmaCann might buy from Curaleaf, but there's no catching up and there's no competing. And that's what we're seeing in the market right now is really, really nice flower, indoor grown flower for like $30, right? $35 at the most. Meanwhile, you've got micro businesses that are coming in trying to make it work that grew out or built out a 3,500 square foot canopy. Mind you, that's still a $2 million build out. And they have to sell their material for $60. And the dispensary owners are like, we can't pay that. It will never sell. And when those micro businesses sit there and they look at their books, they can't get down to those low numbers. And I know this because I've looked at enough of these in basically free consulting jobs here that I've done for some of these guys. And I've said, this is not a viable business. Currently, the way that OCM has the micro businesses structured, they're structured for failure. So we hope that changes in the future. But right now you can't, because they've convinced all of these guys to grow these 3,500 square foot indoors, right? You heard the excuse that it was, we couldn't grow indoor. All these guys, it's nonsense, because none of these farmers had any money. Who was going to foot the bill? Who was going to pay? What's it cost to build a 5,000 square foot indoor facility out? I can tell you because I've priced it out. It's somewhere between 2.75 to do it on the cheap to 5 million to do it on the expensive. Who's putting that capital out in cannabis? Only the ROs.
Yeah,
where that doesn't matter.
So are the ROs supplying most of like extractors, manufacturers like you? I mean, is because you also have to get the right price, otherwise you
right. So for me to resell flower, for me to buy flower and resell it, there's almost no money in it. It almost makes no sense for me to be in the flower market at all.
Yeah, extraction, like.
Well, I mean, for extraction, it gets a little bit different, right? So I have to have a flower on the shelf just because people expect it in the brand, right? So if that ends up being a loss leader and I break even on it or whatever, so be it. It's part of the billboard, right? It's the whole Budweiser model. Yeah. The more you got it the more likely you are to get the sale. But at the end of the day, when it comes to processing, we can work with outdoor material. We can work with greenhouse material. We can make concentrates or other products that are just as good. We can make a pre-roll with outdoor material that's just as good as a pre-roll with indoor material, as long as we've selected the right material. It should be terpier if it was done right. The cannabinoid content is actually better on outdoor when it's done right. There was just a lot of outdoor that wasn't done right, and it's the cheapest way to grow. And I think that's why OCM pushed the outdoor so hard, is they didn't want these guys to get trapped in these huge debt traps of trying to build out these indoor facilities when they knew there was no way they were ever going to compete indoor. But what we're seeing now, at least what I'm seeing, is that the majority of the money is the guys who are growing an acre. If you're growing an acre out and you're growing that whole acre for, let's say, fresh frozen, and you're choosing material that is specific to hash SKU, where you're going to get 4 or 5% drop out of them versus somebody getting 2 to 3% on a non-hash SKU. You cost you the same to grow that acre, but you can charge 40% more for it for the fresh frozen flower. But then they'll turn around and they'll say, "Oh, I don't have any place to freeze this stuff." Well, you didn't have any place to dry it, and you dried it in the barn, and that didn't work so well. Literally, for $2,000 a month, you can rent a 50-foot freezer trailer. So there's just nobody threading the loop, across the state for a lot of these guys. And we can only get to so many and help so many. But there's the best license for cultivator is an outdoor license. And they convinced all these guys to give their outdoor licenses up. And it was the worst thing they could have ever done.
And also, then you have a short you have like one season. You can't keep. You can't keep.
Well, think of it this way. You have one season, two things. We are pushing for a cultivation cap increase for outdoor. We we as in the Association of the New York Cannabis Processors, I'm on the board of that association. We've been pushing for an increase to 5 acres for a year and a half now. And OCM keeps pushing back on it because they say you don't need more canopy. But the reality is you don't need any more flower canopy. We need more biomass canopy. We don't have enough. Distillate has, as much as some people don't like distillate is the baseline product that establishes the price of everything. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to do something with products that you've partially processed, right? So for perfect example, product that needs a lot of keef, and I go through and I keef a bunch of material, there's still going to be 3 or 4% THC in there. Am I just supposed to throw it away? I have to be able to have a process to go through, take the rest of those cannabinoids out of there. That's where distillate comes in. Distillate will always be a cheap way for people, a very accessible way for people to get their cannabinoids, to get their marijuana. So it's not going anywhere, and it's a pivotal product for the reason I just said. So when you look at the distillate market, you look at the biomass market, and you say, okay, well, if distillate's more than $3,500 a liter or $4,000 a liter, what does that get me to when it comes to the end product? And if that end product is not accessible, or within 10 to 20% of what the black market is, it's not going to move. So we require some commoditization of the industry in order to remain competitive, right? So we have to have that distillate SKU. It establishes the price for the biomass. And if you increase the acreage to 5 acres, you have economies of scale on the outdoor market, and that biomass price would stay stable. There's so much biomass that's been inverted into the state, either as THCA trim or just as leaders, that I don't think anybody has a full grasp on just how much biomass we needed in the state if we were to eliminate inversion altogether, right? And I like to use the example of inversion being like a cancer tumor. And we've allowed this tumor to grow and grow and grow and grow. Everybody, the whole body is now supporting this tumor. The dispensaries are supporting the tumor. The processors are supporting the tumor. The cultivators are supporting the tumor. It's huge. If we just all of a sudden have our scalpel, which is OCM, come through and cut that tumor out, we're going to bleed to death. We can't bleed to death. We have to shrink the tumor first. And the only way to shrink that tumor is to expand the cultivation to the points where it does not make sense to invert. If we remove the arbitrage, there's no reason to do it. It's really that simple.
Yeah. So the ROs, the indoor people, they're not supplying any biomass for distillate, really.
Well, they're gonna produce the most profitable product they can grow. For them, that is smokable outdoor flower. And they still produce a tremendous amount of trim from that material. But that trim material from that indoor flower is trading at $200+ a pound right now, because that's all some of these brands can afford. So everybody is searching around trying to buy really nice trim to make pre-rolls and to jump on the pre-roll gravy train here that's been going on. Mm-hmm. And as a result, we've seen the price for trim continue to escalate, but it's only this particular quality of trim, and this quality of trim in bulk is only coming from the ROs. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that trim doesn't go to processing. It goes right back into smokable products. Whereas we start looking at the greenhouse trim, and we're looking at the outdoor trim, and even more so the outdoor biomass, and we can make fantastic concentrates from those, particularly fresh frozen, which is better, in my opinion, outdoor, really good, fresh frozen, harvested at nighttime preferably, and flash frozen right there. And then on the field, taken back and processed. And if growers were to do outdoor cultivations like that, we'd probably be in better shape than we are and be able to hold our own a little bit better against the ROs. But no, the majority of them they do a little bit of distillate processing, but not a whole lot. Most of them don't do any butane processing. I think Columbia Care has a butane rig they don't even use. And I think maybe Curaleaf might actually have theirs, because I think they have a concentrate line. Mm-hmm. But we'll go out to these bigger companies like these ROs, and we'll sell our service. Do you need us to split whatever for you? So what we do hope and what has been happening is that they use us for those particular services.
What you mean you'll go out to them and do what?
They'll
Split?
hire us. They'll hire us, right? So we can either do splits or we can do tolls with farmers. So
What
a
is
farmer can come and they can say, okay, we want you to harvest our entire crop for us. We can take the price of the crop, or we can take the price of the harvesting off of whatever money comes in at the end, but we want it all to go to butane. And we're going to say, okay, we'll do that for you. We're not going to charge you for it, but we're going to keep 50% of the finished product. And they're going to take 50% of the finished product. Then they're either going to take that product and turn it into their own product, or they're going to say, hey, we're just a cultivator. Can you move that oil for us? And then we're going to give them we're going to try to move that oil for them and charge them a small fee on top of it. Or
okay.
we'll use it ourselves, right? And then we'll pay them an agreed upon price if we end up using it ourselves. So the ROs like those agreements as well, but they generally will lean towards tolling. And what tolling is you come in, or they come in and they say, okay, we want you to do this 1,000 pounds of material. How much is it a pound? And I think right now we've been charging $70 a pound for butane extraction. So they say, okay, here's $70,000, run our material, and we give them back the finished product.
Oh, okay. Well, I like that working relationship. I mean, you always feel like it's like the big guys against the small guys, but I'm glad to see that, you can get some benefit out of it, like a working relationship that can help everybody stay afloat is, somewhat.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are refusing to, there's certain things that are undeniable in life, right? Death and taxes. And the other one is that the ROs own the flower market in New York State. So if you're not working with these guys in one way or another, if you're trying to compete with them, you can't, right?
Yeah.
It's like me running a product on Amazon deciding they want to start manufacturing the product themselves and thinking that I on Amazon's platform is somehow going to compete with them. It's just
Yeah.
never going to happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's smart. So basically, I just want to understand. So basically, the solution that should be happening is to help the smaller farmers, the micro farmers and all the smaller farmers, is to increase their canopy for outdoor. Like you feel like, and also because they don't really have the choice to build a indoor facility because of the cost. Is that kind of where it stands?
Yeah. If I was OCM, what I would do is I would take the next $5 million in grants and I would earmark them for greenhouse grants, cannabis greenhouse grants in New York State. I would push the farmers to change back to full outdoor cultivation, and I would offer these greenhouses, and they fall under outdoor and not greenhouse because they're really just giant hoop houses, right? Federal government offers grants on them for farmers all the time. None of the hoop houses that the federal government provides grants for can be used for cannabis. So the outdoor canopy will be exponentially increased in quality just by them taking that $5 million, earmarking for it, putting that out, and then pushing those outdoor licenses. And what I was saying before is when you think about it with an outdoor license, yeah, okay, you start in, let's say, January when the is dead and you're building your entire plan for the next year. By February, you're starting your plants, right? So February, or at least you're starting your genetic search. By March, maybe you, depending on what your facilities look like, just like, all the greenhouses in the state are starting their plants at that point in time, you're starting your plants too. You can get, if you've got the greenhouse space to do it, you can get an entire crop of autoflowers off by the end of July or the first week of August, with enough time to put in your photos at the end of the year, which will end up being waist high by the time it's time for harvest. You have less loss because you have less mold, because the buds are slightly smaller because you're starting the plants later. So you have the option to get 2 crops off. So that's going to keep you busy from the time, let's say February, all the way until November, harvest season, maybe until December, because you're bringing in thousands of pounds. If you're curing them, freezing them, all these different things, all that stuff takes time. So is there really time in a year if you were to bring in a second crop without the underlying resources to, have like 2 big operations going on simultaneously? I think that a lot of these guys that are doing these outdoor grows would be completely okay with that, because with doing just one, because there's quite honestly, there's not enough time for another one. You know, they've got that grow season from basically April until October. And there's not a whole lot of year left after that.
And do you think there are enough cultivation licenses out there, or did you say like the OCM is trying to increase that instead of increasing canopy size? Is that what?
Well, I mean, OCM is, if you ask OCM, they've already given the licenses out, right? So if you were on the list, technically you're being awarded a license. It's just a question of when. So OCM has an entire list of cultivation licenses that can, you know, go ahead and approve without having to go back and license anybody more. But we believe that that's actually a mistake, that let's not issue any more of those. Let's increase the existing canopy size, because 1 acre is just not economically efficient. 2 acres is better. And some people have been able to increase to 2 acres and some haven't. This is some of the trouble we see with OCM and how the regulations aren't really, it's sporadic, right? Different person, different day, different result. And when we're dealing with government, you know, entities, that really shouldn't be the case. But that is what's happening. So some people have been awarded a 2nd acre. I keep saying we, because we talk about this in our association all the time. In the CFA, the Cannabis Farmers Alliance, I believe they're in support of this as well. But if that acreage goes up to 5 acres, it really helps them with the economy of scale. And it really, really stabilizes the entire biomass and distillate market, which essentially is the anchor for the entire industry.
Yeah. So do you think that's happening? I mean, is it going to happen? Do they agree with you? Are they working towards that?
Currently, I'm there. Like I said, the last 2 meetings were conflicting, right? 2 meetings ago, they told us that there was enough canopy or too much canopy. And now at the last meeting, they're saying, well, if you actually look at the data, you know, within 2 years, we're not going to have nearly enough cannabis on the market. And we have to plan for that now.
Right, because I mean, every year the numbers are going up in revenue. So, oh God, that's
well, it's the inversion thing is really confusing them, because there's the data that last week showed that, or maybe it was on Monday, showed that, or it certainly looked like to me that inversion was like more than half of what was making up the cannabis in the state.
Wow.
I find that hard to believe, but I didn't find 30% hard to believe. So is there really much of a jump between 30 and 50?
And then the news came out today, I don't know, or the other day, about, you just keep seeing how they're really cracking down on the manufacturer on Long Island that is, you know, I guess was really supporting inversion.
That's well, you know, nobody's explained to me how he was supporting inversion yet. You know, I see it on the articles and I see it in the headlines, but
well,
the only thing OCM is getting him for is leasing out his license.
Right. Well, right. So I guess he allowed people to come in and extract and use his facility, and they didn't have a license. So, I'm not really sure. I didn't dig into it, but I thought
okay. So
the biggest.
So basically, he was, and this is happening all over the state, by the way. This is a comment I made on LinkedIn the other day. I only leave those comments up for a day, or those posts up for a day or two, so the right people can see them. But they, you know, the post I made the other day was, why isn't every single company in the state and brand in the state that's in that same situation, why aren't they being held to the same standard? Does OCM just not know? And if that's the case, well, it supports the fact that their TPI system is so messed up, it's completely irrelevant. You know, I just had, or maybe I should say I heard, maybe that's better. I heard a dispensary owner out there looking for basically a processor. He wants to produce all of his own brands in his store, right? He knows it's against the rules. He doesn't care. He's just trying to find a processor
It'll
that will
do it.
do it for him, right? So these guys are willing to break the rules. They have no respect for them whatsoever. They're irrelevant to them. And can you really blame him? I mean, look at what our corporations in the United States have taught everybody about business. Do the deed dirty if the fine is less than the profit, right? That's what we've taught people.
They would lose their license. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, this is the thing, is that the regulations are written so arbitrarily and so subjectively that anybody who gets a lawyer can fight tooth and nail just about everything. And this is why I made the comment about the inversion, because I haven't seen any evidence presented that definitively shows that somebody was inverting. And we have to define what that means as well, because at the end of the day, there is a hemp loophole. And this has been brought up to OCM. This has been brought up to trade practices by me personally. This has been brought up to the New York State Legislature, who didn't even know that THCA could be made from hemp, by the way. Neither did trade practices until I wrote a white paper for them. So basically, you can make THCA is federally legal. It is. They've proven it at this point in multiple courts and circuit courts and appeals courts. Hemp has won over and over and over again. If somebody really pushed on it, how do you argue that a product that meets certain safety standards, if I can buy CBD rosin and I can buy THC rosin, and this one I can't buy out of state, and this one I can only buy in state, and the state doesn't allow the federally legal product to come in because it competes with their punitive tax system for this particular product. Well, I have a federal court case on my hands here, right? And they've already lost. They've already lost this case. This is what the hell was the case? It was the guys that sued the state for saying that they had to be New York residents. Right?
Oh yeah, the same. Oh God, they're from Michigan or something.
Yes, and they won in appeals court.
That's right.
And that has to do with the elastic clause. So that same argument could be laid out because it has to do with protectionism over an industry that they don't want a federally legal product to come in. So if somebody really put the pressure on it, I don't see how they could keep the material out. And this is where the loophole lies, right? I think OCM knows that. And very early on, if you read the regulations, what the regulation says is that any cannabinoid at all from the hemp side, if you want to use it in a marijuana product, you have to get special permission from the board to do that. It has to be board approved. Well, very early on in the industry, New York's, once they legalized, they realized that was problematic because nobody in New York was going to be growing CBD flower to be sold on the legal market. And because of that, we weren't going to have access to any minors, no CBG, no CBD, no CBN, can't add any of that to the products. And the question was, well, why? Well, we're licensed on the hemp side. We're licensed on this side. The safety is exactly the same. The testing requirements are exactly the same. Why can't one be used as the other without every single person having to go to OCM for every single SKU? And they put out one of their famous letters that has really no meaning and said, okay, we're going to allow for you to use hemp inputs, non-psychoactive hemp inputs, no conversions, right? So they didn't want any Delta 8s or Delta 10s. Mind you that I can legally still manufacture that in New York State and sell it out of New York,
right?
On it sold in New York. So you take that and you look at that and you say, okay, well, THC is non-psychoactive. So doesn't that fall into CBG and CBD according to what your policy letter and your regulations now imply? And the answer is yes, right? So that means THCA trim that you can buy for $20 a pound anywhere in the country. That means THCA isolate, which, is somewhere around 1,600 to 2,000, I think, maybe 3,000, I don't know. All of these products that are available all over the country that are hemp derived, now all of a sudden, are they eligible for the program? Well, I'm not going to ask But if I ended up with a fine or anything like that in court, my argument to them back would be, your guidance was unclear. So do I get thrown out of the program? Do I get fined? What's going to happen here? Because if you peel back that onion, I don't know if you're going to like what you find. And this is exactly what I told OCM. This entire industry is using this loophole. It's being used. So is it inversion, or was it a loophole that was not consciously created by OCM themselves? I would argue
but still, I guess the fact remains, like you said, it's the industry in New York isn't, self-sufficient. It's not working, it's hurting farmers really, who, because they're all this biomass and concentrate, I guess, is coming in too. People are just selling, a lot of that as well. So
I think metric will stop a lot of that. I think the Omnium, the very public display with Omnium, will also scare some people away.
Yeah.
I will tell you that second group of processors, about a year and a half later, that got approved, there was dozens and dozens of them, and they were almost all shell companies. Which I shouldn't say almost all shell companies, but there was a lot of them that were shell companies out of California. So it was. I feel like OCM failed their due diligence. I really do. I really don't think the folks that got approved in the second batch of approvals got anywhere near the inspection that we got. We were license number 11, I think, and we had these products that were banned in New York on our website because we were selling them out of the state. And it said on the bottom, if you order these and you're from New York, you're from New York, we will cancel your order and it won't be fulfilled. We wouldn't have fulfilled it. That wasn't good enough for OCM. They made us completely take the products off the website, even though the regulations say I'm supposed to be able to allow to sell out of state. We couldn't just shut off the ordering just for New York, so they made me remove it completely. Now you turn around what's going on today, and you've got companies like HPI that are running brands like Sluggers, and Sluggers Sluggers.com is a THCA hemp website that you go on and order your pre-rolls and order your flour and order your concentrates and your rosins. And here's the big secret, right? This stuff that they're calling hemp, it's not hemp, it's marijuana. It's always been marijuana. It's just silly words that we use to confuse. And, we focus on that 0.3%.
Yeah. Oh, so it really is marijuana, but
it's marijuana. Sure. So what they do is, all right,
I've been hearing that too. Not from even in New York, but
if you've got a field that you're growing and you pull it, let's say a month before it's ready, your CBG numbers are going to be high. You're going to lose a little bit of THC, but you're not going to have you're going to lose a little THCA, but you're not going to have any THC conversion at all. So technically now that's hemp according to the law. We've got flower right now from New York State licensed farms that would fall under the definition of hemp because of how little THC that are in them, right? It's completely silliness. But New York State prohibits the sales into New York, right? So by Sluggers having an online store that sells into New York, why weren't they treated the same way we were? Why is Sluggers being allowed to come in and have a brand that's going to compete with my products on the shelf, and I can't even compete with them on the hemp market? You're not even going to allow me to, but you're going to allow this. And as a dispensary owner, why in the world would you carry that product? So that they can go home, follow the website that's on the bag, and order their products directly from them and have them shipped to their house, right? We have to be smarter.
Right. But also that's deception. I mean, it's just wrong what they're doing, and you shouldn't be supporting that. I mean, what's going to taint the industry? So gosh, wow, this is craziness. So I guess just winding down, I don't know if I've missed anything. I feel like we've covered, what's really kind of happening in New York. And is there anything you think that I've missed at all? That
I don't, Pam, there's so much. Like I said, we start peeling back the layers of the onion, and I think you'd be surprised that a lot of the things you hear I've been lucky to be privy to some of the behind closed door conversations, and I'm stunned we even have a law, to be honest. I mean, my time in Albany has really questions my faith in our system, because they have no idea. Our elected officials have no clue what any of this is. It's, to them, it's either a problem in votes. So either we solve the problem and we get the votes, or we don't solve the problem and we start pretending that the problem doesn't exist. Because once you lose momentum in Albany, they don't want to hear about it. You don't want to hear about it. After you've lobbied to them for a year and we've tried to do X, Y, and Z and the changes haven't been made, they don't want to hear about it anymore, because the public doesn't care. They don't care.
I'm worried about the safety. I mean, honestly, if they can't get all this other stuff together, how are they making sure, like just this whole sluggers thing? I mean, if they're deceiving the public and, on really, they're not even, the labels are incorrect. If they're saying they're selling hemp and they're not, I mean, it's all wrong. Where's the safety? I guess actually one last question that I'm kind of seeing a big, void in, or where we need to fix it, in the last mile from like warehouse and distribution to retail, is preservation of the plant, so we keep all these terpenes and cannabinoids and things like that, and it doesn't degrade, because as we know, oxygen, light, heat, and time degrades cannabis in any form. And retailers are not keeping.
We see, some dispensaries that struggle with this. I do think that at the end of the day, competition solves this problem, because, somewhere somebody is going to start doing that, and they're going to make sure things are being chilled or whatever else, or handled properly. And people will take note of that, and they'll get more business. And then the next guy will say, hey, what are you doing that I'm not? And then he'll be like, oh, well, I'm doing this. Right. So
Right.
I think competition solves that problem.
And education.
Yeah, well, I mean, cannabinoid education is I take for granted what's in my own head, and I make assumptions about what people know, and there's still people that don't know a lot of what I think is basically the alphabet.
Yeah.
So
Seriously.
it's tough. I used to try to teach it as much as I could, but now it's just like I have to teach a graduate class, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want a juicy nugget, I'll tell you where to look. It's in the testing, and it's in the labs. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find that all of our labs are invalid, because they were supposed to be validated by Wadsworth Labs. Wadsworth Labs never got their equipment. That's your state police lab. They never bought the equipment. They were supposed to set the standards for the entire state. In it, because of that, every single lab is operating off their own standard. There's no standardization between labs, and the best part of all of that is that nobody knows, and they tied taxes, right? When we had potency taxes, they tied taxes to potency. Now you've got labs that are all different, sometimes as much as 15 to 20% difference, with no state's standardization, and a tax law that says that taxes have to be basically collected fairly, evenly, and state sanctioned. So you basically collected taxes off of a third party. So don't be surprised if these labs ends up being, there's all kinds of money coming back to people for what they paid potency taxes. It's coming down the pike.
That's a great way to end.